Hello, today we are going to report about sustainable management, the UN SDGs, and the Environmental Management System, or the EMS. So first, what is sustainable management? Sustainable management is the intersection between business and sustainability. It looks beyond short-term profits and focuses on the long-term gain by incorporating both the environmental and social costs of doing business into management decisions. So sustainable management has three bottom lines, which is the people, planet, and profit. These three are both equally important. So for the people, it takes into consideration the social variables such as community, education, equity, social resources, health and well-being, and quality of life. For the planet, the environmental variables are natural resources, water and air quality, energy conservation, and land use. And last is the profit. It takes into consideration the economic variables, which are the bottom line and cash flows. So first is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or commonly known as the UN SDGs. The UN SDGs are blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. So on September 25, 2015, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution to mitigate the various problems that the world faces. The resolution set out 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, or also known as the Global Goals, to be achieved through a holistic approach by 2030. It is also called as the 2030 Agenda. So all the 17 SDGs are integrated, meaning the action in one area will affect the outcomes in others, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability, or the sustainable management. So for the 17 sustainable development goals, for first, we have the no poverty. It means to end poverty in all its form everywhere. Second, zero hunger. End hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Third is the good health and well-being. It ensures healthy lives and promotes well-being for all at all ages. Fourth, quality education. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Fifth is the gender equality. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Six is the clean water and sanitation. Ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Seven, we have the affordable and clean energy. It ensures access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Eight is the decent work and economic growth. Promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable and economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. For ninth, we have the industry, innovation, and infrastructures. Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. For the 10th, we have reducing inequalities. Reduce inequality within and among countries. 11th, we have sustainable cities and communities. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. For the number 12, we have responsible consumption and production. It is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. 13 is the climate action. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. 14th and 15 are life below water and life on land. For life below water, it conserves and sustainably use the oceans, sea, and marine resources for a sustainable development. On the other hand, for life on land, it is to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. For the 16, we have peace, justice, and strong institutions. promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And lastly, for partnerships for the goals, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. So these sustainable development goals has a target of having zero in all areas such as zero poverty, zero emission of carbon dioxide and other factors. So by 2030, we must achieve all the sustainable development goals without leaving any country behind.
So now we move on to the Where Are We Now section. This will be sort of like a progress report of some of the relevant SDGs in the current year, as well as the implications of COVID 19. The first one, no poverty. The world was off track to end poverty by 2030, as you can see in this chart. By 2030, it is expected that global poverty is still at 6% and not at zero. One of the main reasons for this is because when looking at data from the previous year, young workers are twice as likely to be living in extreme poverty than adult workers. In 2014, around 4 billion people did not benefit from any form of social protection. And now, due to the pandemic, more than 71 million people are into extreme poverty, making this the first increase in global poverty in decades. The next one is clean water and sanitation. There is still a significant lack of water and sanitation services. 2.2 billion people lack safely managed drinking water, while 4.2 billion people lack safely managed sanitation. By 2030, it is predicted that around 700 million people would be displaced due to water scarcity. And when the pandemic hit, around 3 billion people lack basic hand washing facilities at home, which is required to combat COVID 19. Next slide, please. For affordable and clean energy, in 2018, 789 million people still lack elec- electricity, and there needs to be a push towards sustainable energy, especially now since health facilities are open 24/7 due to the pandemic, and it is crucial that the electricity that they use will never run out and that it comes from sustainable sources. For responsible consumption and production, unsustainable use of natural resources become even more rampant, mainly because of the rise of fossil fuel subsidies every year. There has been an increase of more than $100 billion in subsidies from 2015 to 2018. This means that the fossil fuel subsidies have increased, and as a result, more fossil fuels are used for making electricity. A significant portion of food is also lost in supply chains, which is a massive waste in resources. Next slide, please. Now we move on to climate action. 2019 was the warmest year to be recorded, and the global temperatures are estimated to increase by 3.2 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. And although the lockdown may have decreased greenhouse gas emissions due to generally less activity, it is still short of the annual reduction required to limit global warming. And only 85 countries have national disaster risk reduction strategies aligned to Sendai framework. Next slide, please. For life below water, ocean acidification continues to threaten marine environments and ecosystem services. And it is expected that by 2100, there is a 100 to 150% rise in ocean acidity. Global marine key biodiversity areas covered by protected areas are increased. However, the lockdown seemed to have helped in increasing the chance for oceans to recuperate. Next slide, please. And last, for life on land, forest areas continue to decline at an alarming rate, driven mainly by agricultural expansion. 10 million hectares of forests are destroyed each year. So that is all for this progress report on the SDGs.
So how can industrial companies and institutions help achieve the SDGs? This is where the Environmental Management System or the EMS comes in. Next slide. EMS is a set of processes and practices that helps an organization lessen environmental impacts and increase operating efficiency. It helps in improving the environmental performance of a company, helps lessen pollution, increase awareness with regards to environmental issues and responsibilities as well. However, this does not dictate a level of environmental performance that must be achieved by a company. Each organization's EMS is tailored to its own individual objectives and targets. Next slide. The ISO 14001 standard is actually the most common standard for EMS based on the Plan, Do, Act methodology. This is developed by the International Organization for Standardization, or better known as ISO. There are main 5 stages of this EMS, mainly commitment and policy, planning, implementation, evaluation, and review. Next slide. So let's discuss the 5 steps of this ISO. The first step is the commitment and policy. This is where the management commits to environmental improvement and establishes the organization's environmental policy. This is also known as the foundation of the EMS and the starting plan of the whole EMS. Next is the planning. This is where an organization identifies environmental aspects of its operation, such as air pollutants, hazardous waste that could have negative impacts. The company then makes a set of objectives and goals regarding these aspects. An example could be by reducing the use of chemical by X%. Next slide. The third step is the implementation. This is the follow-through of the action plan by using necessary human resources, which actually refers to the labor work that would be used to implement the whole plan. The fourth is the evaluation, wherein the company monitors its operations to evaluate whether targets are being met and whether the plans is being efficient. If not, then the company is going to take corrective actions in order to improve it. This is where the review comes in, the last and final step. This is where the management views the result of the evaluation to see if the EMS is actually working. This is a continuous loop for the improvement of this plan, since there should be continuous revision in order for the plan to be better than it was before. Next slide. This is a summary of the ISO 14001 standard, which is actually just a continuous process of improvement with regards to the environmental impact as a company has. Next slide. So that is all regarding SDGs and EMS. Thank you, and we are now opening the floor for any questions.